there's a culture behind this. People are afraid. Corporate media is afraid of losing their jobs. The establishment's afraid of losing their jobs. They are being told, believe me, the unspoken, but anyone who's a part of that culture understands, there's an unspoken little hashtag that's going around saying loyalty will be rewarded. We need to let them know that integrity will be rewarded. Speaking of integrity, please welcome to the stage our future president, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Let me thank Pastor Wiltern, and let me thank especially Rosario Dawson for that wonderful. Rosario is not just a wonderful actress. She is standing up every day fighting for social justice, racial justice, economic justice. Let me also apologize to the many people who couldn't get in. What ended up happening is we were supposed to be in Wyoming today. It's snowing a lot in Wyoming. So we figured we would come to LA. It doesn't snow here. We sent out an email and many thousands of people responded. This place only holds, I think, 2,300, and we have people outside. But this I promise, we will be back. There will be a larger venue. And next time we'll have 20 or 30,000 of us together. Let me get right to the point and pick up where Rosario left off. There's some mythology going around out there that we cannot win this election. That is mythology. Now tell that to the people in Idaho and Utah last night. They gave us almost 80% of the vote. And tell that to the people in 9 other states where we won in almost every instance overwhelming victories. Secretary Clinton did very well in the South. We are out of the South, we're in the West now. And we can argue as to whether Vermont is more progressive than California, but I feel very comfortable here tonight. To the White House goes right through the West and right through California on June 7th. Now I want to say something else. Rosario was talking about the media, and she made some very important points, and I'm going to pick up on that in a moment. But this is what I want you to know. If anyone tells you, well, you know, Bernie is a nice guy, he combs his hair really nicely. A1 dresser, all right? But, you know, he just can't win a general election. Can't be the winner. So let me just relate to you a recent CNN poll. Here's the poll. Here's the poll, all right? Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton did very well. She got 53% to 41 for Trump. She won by 12 votes. That's very good. Bernie Sanders won by 20 points. And by the way, that is true of virtually every national and statewide poll that is out there. We beat Trump and we beat him badly. Same poll, John Kasich defeats Hillary Clinton 51 to 45. He beats her by 6 points. We beat Kasich by 6 points. Listen to this. Same poll. Ted Cruz, 48%. Ted Cruz, 48. Hillary Clinton, 48. Bernie Sanders, 55. Cruz, 42. So that's the first point. Yes, we can win this nomination. It's not going to be easy. California will be very important. On June 7th, we're going to need a massive voter turnout. People can vote early, do that. But what I want to do also is just take a moment to tell you some of the differences between Secretary Clinton and myself, because they're really substantive differences. Number one, I think all of you are aware that to a very horrific level, big money dominates what goes on in this country politically and economically. And all of the powerful special interests donate huge amounts of money to political candidates. When we began this campaign, we had to make a very important decision. And that decision was, should we have a super PAC or not? We agreed with you. And here is why. I don't represent the billionaire class. I don't represent Wall Street or corporate America, all the big money trusts. So we decided it would be hypocritical to ask them for money or to take their money. What we chose to do is something very, very different, and in this day and age, pretty radical. What we did is we went out to the middle class of this country and working families, and we said, if you want to be part of a campaign that is going to take on big money and transform this country, we need your help. And you know what happened? And this, to me, honest to God, is mind-blowing. Never would have believed it could have happened. In the last 10 months, we have received well over 5 million individual campaign contributions. Anybody know what the average contribution is? $27. And that is revolutionary unto itself, because what we are showing is you can run a winning national campaign without begging the ruling class for money. To quote Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg, this is a campaign of the people, by the people, and for the people. Now that's how we have raised our campaign contributions. Hillary Clinton has chosen to do it a slightly different way. Just a slightly different way. She has several super PACs. One of them recently reported raising $25 million from special interest, including $15 million from Wall Street. Now, in addition to that, as many of you know, Secretary Clinton has given speeches on Wall Street behind closed doors for $225,000 a speech. Now, this is what I think. I think if somebody is given $225,000 for an hour speech, it must be a brilliant speech. It must be a mind-shattering speech. It must be a planetary transformative speech. It must be written in Shakespearean prose. And I think the secretary should share that speech with all of us. Secretary Clinton said, she said, look, I will release the transcripts if other people do the same. So, I've got a dramatic announcement, LA. You ready? It's a very important announcement. I am announcing tonight that I will release all of the speeches that I've given to Wall Street. And here they are. No speeches. Now, I don't know. It is hard for me to imagine. I've been thinking about this. Why won't Wall Street give me $225,000 this week? I'm ready. We'll give the money to charity, but I'm ready to go. But maybe it has something to do that I would tell the crooks on Wall Street that they will not continue to destroy the economy of the United States of America. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I would tell them that when you have a handful of financial institutions today with unbelievable political and economic power, we are going to break them up. And furthermore, listen to this. A month or so ago, actually longer than a month ago, Goldman Sachs, you all know who Goldman Sachs is? You know Goldman Sachs, okay. Anyhow, they reached a settlement with the United States government for $5 billion. $5 billion. Now, why did they reach the settlement? Well, the answer is obvious. They defrauded the American people before the financial crisis. They were selling worthless packages of subprime mortgage loans, and they and the other banks, their actions drove this country into the worst economic downturn, as you all know, since the Great Depression. But here's the point. Some kid in Los Angeles or Vermont gets picked up today with marijuana. That kid will have a police record. But that's another story we're going to get to in a second. But if you are an executive on Wall Street whose recklessness, greed, and illegal behavior resulted in millions of people losing their jobs, their homes, and their life savings, you know what happens to you? Nothing. No, actually, that's not quite right. You get a pay raise. That's what happens to you. So we will, if my good friends on Wall Street choose to invite me there, what we will tell them is that there are going to be changes in the criminal justice system. And it's not only low-income people and working people who go to jail, but CEOs and executives on Wall Street who break the law. So I just want to know, do you think they're going to pay me $225,000 to tell them that? Probably not. That's all right. Another issue that Secretary Clinton and I disagree on, and that is the issue of trade. Now, trade is not a sexy issue. It's not an issue that the media covers virtually at all. It is an enormously important issue. That's right. What we have seen in the last many years are trade agreements like NAFTA, CAFTA, permanent normal trade relations with China. And these agreements, as all of you know, were written by corporate America, and their goal was very simple. You don't need a PhD in economics to figure it out. What they were saying is, why do I want to pay a worker in Los Angeles or in Vermont $20-30 an hour when I can shut down here, move to a low-wage country, produce there, bring my products back into this country? That's it. Nothing more complicated than that. And that is what has happened. Since 2001, we have lost almost 60,000 factories in America, millions of decent-paying jobs. Now, I have helped lead the opposition to every one of these disastrous trade agreements. And I will help lead the opposition to this TPP. Secretary Clinton has supported virtually every one of these trade agreements, and after telling us how great the TPP was, she eventually, under pressure from the trade union movement, finally said no to it. Let me give you another example of where there is a very significant difference. Everybody here knows that foreign policy is a very important part of what a president does. The most important foreign policy issue that we have dealt with in this country in modern history is Iraq. I listened very closely to what Bush and Cheney and all these guys had to say. I didn't believe them, and I voted against the war in Iraq. Secretary Clinton, who was then in the United States Senate, heard the same information that I did. She voted for the war in Iraq. Now, foreign policy is not easy stuff. It is not easy stuff. Nobody, it's complicated and everybody makes a mistake on this stuff. But one of the lessons that we should learn from history is that you just don't go around overthrowing governments without thinking through the long-term consequences of that. And that is true even when we're dealing with really ugly dictator types like Saddam Hussein, was an awful person. But what you gotta do is you gotta say, what happens the day after this guy is gone? what kind of political vacuum occurs, who is going to fill that vacuum. That is the same thing, or a similar approach, that she took when she was Secretary of State with Gaddafi. A dictator overthrew Gaddafi, and then we had a political vacuum, and ISIS now has a foothold in Libya. We have got to learn the lesson, whether it is overthrowing Salvador Allende in Chile, whether it is overthrowing Jacob Arbenz in Guatemala way back when, whether it is overthrowing the democratically elected Prime Minister of Iran many, many years ago, Mohammad Mossadegh. We overthrew him. He was replaced by the Shah, who was an awful person, and then you had the Iranian Revolution with Khomeini. So what you have to be thinking about is unintended consequences. So let me just say this to you now. Let me just say this. Under President Bernie Sanders, the brave... Sanders administration, the brave men and women in our armed forces will not be involved in perpetual warfare in the Middle East. Right now, we face a major crisis in terms of global climate change. And I'm proud to tell you that as a member of the Senate Environmental Committee, I have introduced the most comprehensive legislation ever introduced to combat climate change, which includes a tax on carbon. I was one of the first people to understand and support making sure that the Keystone Pipeline was never built. Now, Secretary Clinton was very much for the Keystone Pipeline before she was against it. She ended up opposing it, again, under tremendous pressure from the environmental community, but she supported it. Earlier. Now, there is another issue out there. Everybody here knows and should know that we are facing a major water crisis in this country and in this world. I was in Flint, Michigan, and what I saw there was literally beyond my comprehension, and I say that with all honesty. I was really shaken after hearing from parents whose children were being poisoned by lead in the water in Flint. All right, now the issue of fracking arises. In my view, we have got to move toward the elimination of fracking. That is my view. Unfortunately, that is not Secretary Clinton's view. Now, the reason that our campaign is doing as well as it is we're doing something pretty radical. We're telling the American people the truth. And it's a truth that you're not going to see on television very often. but it is the truth nonetheless. And as everybody knows, truth is not easy stuff, not in our personal lives, not in our political lives. There's a tendency as human beings that we want to kind of run away from the pain of the truth. But this country does not go forward unless we put those troubling issues right on the table and we deal with them. Truth number one. Truth number one is, people in our country. Last night I was in Arizona. All right, I'll get to that in a second. No, sorry, I wasn't in Arizona. I was in San Diego. Thank you for telling me where I was. That's right. In a lot of places. And after the program, I was introduced to a man who was late in his 90s, who fought in World War II. And whenever I meet people like that, I think about the incredible sacrifices they and other veterans have gone through to preserve what is great in this country. And we owe them so much. Those men and women fought to maintain our country's way of life, and the essence of our way of life is democracy. One person, one vote. So it gives me no pleasure to tell you what you already know. That as a result of this disastrous Supreme Court decision on Citizens United, our campaign finance system is now corrupt, and we are seeing democracy being undermined. We now take it for granted. You read in the paper that some billionaire is deciding to support some candidate. That is not what democracy is about. That's oligarchy, not democracy. A Sanders administration will move aggressively to overturn Citizens United. But it is not only a corrupt campaign finance system, it is the kind of voter suppression that we are seeing for Republican governors all over this country. You would think that after all of the struggle and the pain and the death that we experienced to make sure that every person, regardless of the color of their skin, had the right to vote, that discussion would be over with. And yet now we have Republican governors and others trying to work as hard as they can to make it impossible for people who will vote against them to participate in the political process. They're going against African Americans and Latinos and young people. So I say, and last night in Arizona, what did you see? We got an email. We got an email from a woman who was a friend of somebody on our campaign. She emailed that she had been waiting online to vote in Arizona, Phoenix, I think, for 5 hours. Now, how many thousands of people walked away and did not exercise their constitutional right? Now, whether that was deliberate or whether that was just incompetence in Arizona, I don't know. But that is not acceptable. And I say to all of those cowardly Republican governors who are working hard, who are working overtime to deny people the right to vote, if you are afraid of a free and fair election, get out of politics, get another job. that many other countries do, not complicated. When you're 18 years of age, you are registered to vote. End of discussion. This campaign is creating all kinds of energy and excitement because we are also talking about the rigged economy. Now, what do I mean by a rigged economy? Again, this is not stuff that you see on TV. But what a rigged economy means is that right now in the United States, we have more income and wealth inequality than almost any major country on earth. Today in America, listen to this. Top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, 1/10 of 1%, now owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. That's a rigged economy. Today, wealthiest 20 people own more wealth than the bottom half of America, 150 million Americans. That's a rigged economy. And let me tell you something else. Today in America, you got one family, the Wiltern family of Walmart. This is the wealthiest family in America. They own more wealth than the bottom 40%. But here's what's interesting. The Wilterns pay their employees at Walmart wages that are so low that many of these workers are forced to go on Medicaid and food stamps and subsidized housing. And here is what the rigged economy is about. You, through higher taxes, are subsidizing Walmart and the wealthiest family in America. That is pretty stupid. Middle class does not have to subsidize a multi-billion-dollar family. And I say, we hear a lot in this country about welfare abuse. Well, the biggest welfare abuser in this country is the wealthiest family. So I say to the Wiltern family, get off of welfare, pay your workers annual wage. What this campaign is about is asking the American people to think outside of the box, not to accept the status quo of today as the status quo we have to live with. And when we look at politics in that way, we recognize that we have a criminal justice system that is broken. What does that mean? I want you again to think about it. This is the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Now, most people don't know that today, because almost all the new income and wealth goes to the top 1%, but we are, cumulatively speaking, the wealthiest country in the world. And yet, we have today more people in jail than any other country on earth. China, 4 times our size. We have more people in jail than China. And we have got to ask ourselves, why do we have 2.2 million people in jail, disproportionately African American, Latino, and Native Americans? Why is that? What do we do to change it? Well, let's start off by telling you something again that is not in the media. All right? Today in America, if you are a kid, a high school graduate between 17 and 20, if you are white, real unemployment, whether you're unemployed or underemployed, 33%. Latino, 36%. African American 51%. So you got millions of young people out there today, over 5 million young people, don't have jobs, not in school. Some of them are going to get into trouble. You want a radical idea? How about investing in jobs and education for the kids? Not jails and incarceration. We should be the nation which has the best educated population in the world, not the one with more people in jail. Now, all of us are tired of seeing on TV grainy videos of unarmed people being shot by police officers. Now, I'm a former mayor, and I've worked with police officers for many, many years. The vast majority of police officers are honest, hardworking, and they have a very difficult job. Not easy being a cop today, it really isn't. But when a police officer, like any other public official, breaks the law, that officer must be held accountable. We have got to demilitarize local police departments. We have got to make police departments reflect the diversity of the communities they are serving. We have got to rethink the so-called war on drugs. Millions of Americans over the last 3 decades have received police records for possession of marijuana. And that is serious business. You try to go out and get a job, you got a police record, it is harder, you don't get a job, you don't get any income, bad things happen. Right now, under the Federal Controlled Substance Act, marijuana is listed as a Schedule I drug. That's the highest level. Alongside, if you can believe this, with heroin. You know, we can argue the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but it sure as heck ain't heroin, that's for sure. That is why I have introduced legislation which will take marijuana out of the federal control system. This campaign is surprising everybody for one simple reason. We listen to ordinary Americans, not just wealthy campaign contributors. And when workers all across this country are telling me they can't make it on $8 or $9 an hour. And that is why together we're going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. Understanding is that here in California, you're going to have a referendum on the ballot to do just that. Let's hope it passes. This campaign is listening to women. And what women are saying is they are tired of working for 79 cents on the dollar compared to men. They want the whole damn dollar. And I know that every man in this room will stand with the women in the fight for parenthood. This campaign is listening to young people. And I have to tell you, extremely proud that in state after state, we are winning by large margins. Young people, by young people, I don't mean just, 20-year-olds. I'm talking about people 45, 50 and younger. And for those of you who are in your 20s, you will appreciate in a few years that 45 is very young. It's not so old. But here is what young people all over this country are telling me. And again, this is why we have to think outside of the status quo and just look at things. Here's what they're telling me. They're saying, Bernie, everybody told us, our parents told us, the TV told us, everybody told us how important it was for us to get an education. How important it was for our own lives and for this country, because we need a well-educated workforce. And we did it. We went out, we got a great education, but now we're stuck with $30,000 or $50,000 in student debt. So take a step back and think about it. Why are we punishing millions of people because they got an education? It's just not like they did something wrong, they did something right. Now think about this as well. And this is going to happen. It'll happen sooner or later. Our job is to make it sooner. But think about this. 50, 100 years ago, whenever, very smart people, very courageous people said, you know what, in America, it should not only be wealthy kids who get an education. We don't want our children, we're working class, we're poor. We don't want our kids working on farms or in factories. We want our kids to have an education. And what they did, which was really quite incredible, they fought for public education in America. That means that every kid from the first grade through the 12th grade, regardless of income, could get an education. That was a pretty radical idea back then. But what has happened, as all of you know, the world has changed, the economy has changed. People need more education now to get the good jobs that are out there. Today, in fact, in many respects, a college degree is the equivalent of what a high school degree was 50 years ago. 50 years ago, you got a high school degree, you were pretty well educated, you could go out and get a good job. And that takes us to how we define public education today. And I believe that when we talk about public education today, what we have to be talking about is making public colleges and universities tuition free. Now, some people think this is a radical idea. It really is not. It exists in Germany. It exists in Scandinavia and other countries. And you know what? Think about this. 50, 60 years ago in California, in New York, all over this country, public colleges and universities were virtually tuition free. If 50 or 60 years ago in California or Vermont, we could have public colleges and universities tuition free, we damn well can do it today. And here is what is revolutionary about that idea. What it will say is to every child in America in the 4th grade, in the 8th grade, it says to that kid, you do your schoolwork well, you take your schoolwork seriously, you will be able to get a higher education regardless of the income of your family. Second of all, we've got to deal with the disaster of student debt in this country right now. Anybody here with student debt? I talked to a guy in Iowa a couple of months ago. This guy has his late 20s, married, 2 kids. He is paying over 50% of his income back in student loans. And on and on and on. I can tell you a dozen stories that are unbelievable. What's the point? The point is people should not be punished for decades paying off very high levels of student debt. What we will do is give people the opportunity to refinance that debt at the lowest interest rates they can find. Now, people say, my opponents say, Bernie, you're thinking too big. You're too radical. Bernie, you're Santa Claus. You're throwing out all this free stuff. How are you going to pay for it? Okay, this is how we're going to pay for it. And again, think outside of the box. Think about this. 8 years ago, 2008, 2009, after Wall Street's greed, recklessness, and illegal behavior destroyed this economy, millions of people lost their jobs and their life savings and all that. What did Congress do? They bailed out Wall Street, okay? That was not considered, that was the way it is. That's what the big money interest wanted. That's okay, that's what we do. But somehow, if I talk about saying that we're gonna have a tax on Wall Street speculation, which will bring in more than enough money to make public colleges and universities tuition-free and lower student debt, suddenly that is considered radical. I don't think so. The American people bailed out Wall Street. It is Wall Street's time to help the working families in this country. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Latino community. There are 11 million undocumented people in this country, and what the Latino community is telling me is they are tired of living in the shadows, tired of living in fear. They want comprehensive immigration reform and a path toward citizenship. And if Congress will not do its job, I will use all of the executive power in the law. The job of real immigration reform, and I speak as somebody who is the son of an immigrant, so I know a little bit about this. But the job of real immigration reform is to unite families, not divide families. And therefore, we will end the deportations that are now taking place. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the African American community. And they are asking, how does it happen that this government has trillions of dollars to spend on a war in Iraq that we never should have gotten into? But somehow we do not have the resources to rebuild devastated minority communities all over this country. Just before I came up, we had a small meeting backstage, and a gentleman reminded me of something which I had forgotten about. I was in Baltimore, Maryland, a number of months ago. And I was in the community where Freddie Gray was killed. And in that community, and this is true all over this country, you could not find a grocery store. You got that? No grocery store. You could not buy fresh vegetables. All you had is these little stores selling beer and potato chips at very high prices. In that community, and similarly all over this country, you could not go to a bank and cash a check because there were no banks in that community. All there were the payday lender crooks. In that community, and again, not just in that community in Baltimore, but all over this country, many of the buildings were boarded up. Unemployment off the charts, schools failing, inadequate access to health care. If we can give tax breaks to billionaires and fight a war we should never have fought, we can rebuild inner city America. This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Native American community. And everybody knows that from even before we became a nation, that the Native Americans, the first Americans, were treated absolutely shamefully. They were lied to. They were cheated. Treaties that they signed in good faith were broken. And today, all over this country, you're seeing Native American reservations and communities where the suicide rate of young people is unbelievable, where alcoholism, drug addiction is rampant, schools are inadequate, health care not available. We owe the first Americans more than we can ever pay. They have had a a huge impact on the quality, the best aspects of our culture, and they, more than any people, have taught us that we have got to live with nature, not against nature. I am a member of the U.S. Senate Committee on the Environment. I have talked to scientists all over this country, all over the world. The debate is over. Climate change is real. And it is caused by human activity, and it is already causing devastating problems in our country. You are experiencing it here in California and all over the world. Now, what the scientists also tell us, and this is scary stuff, is if we do not get our act together now, if we do not act aggressively now in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel, the troubles we have today will only get much, much worse in the coming years. More drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more acidification of the ocean, more rising sea levels, more international conflict as people fight over limited natural resources. That is where we are. As President of the United States, I will help lead the planetary effort This is not just an American issue, it is a global issue. We have got to take on the fossil fuel industry, transform the energy system. This campaign is raising an issue that we don't talk about enough. And that is, there is only one major country on earth, just one, that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. And that country is the United States of America, and together we're going to end that. Now, I have been attacked. And by the way, I see all of our great nurses here, and I want to thank them. And I'll tell you why I want to thank them. I want to thank them not only for the work they do every day in helping us when we're sick, delivering our babies, taking care of us when we are old, but I want to thank these guys not only for supporting my campaign, but I want to thank them for taking their job so seriously that they understand they cannot do the job they want to do when so many of our people remain uninsured, underinsured, or can't afford the medicine they need. Why I agree with the nurses that we need a medical tech up there. What happens sometimes when people are standing for a while and get dehydrated, that's what happens. But it's... Okay. But what, you know, it's, I don't know what, it's somewhat coincidental here, but I I have been criticized for saying this, so therefore I will say it again. And I know I speak for my brothers and sisters in the nursing community. We believe that health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. The Affordable Care Act has done a number of good things. We've done away with the stupidity of pre-existing conditions. More people have insurance, and we have done away with discrimination against women in terms of what they pay for premiums. But 29 million people still have no health insurance. Many of you are underinsured with high deductibles and copayments. And we are being ripped off every day by the greed of the drug companies. And that is why, together, we are going to pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. Everybody here knows that real change, I love you too. All of you give me the strength to keep going every day. Thank you. You may not know how beautiful all of you look. You are beautiful. And that leads me to something, that's very important, and that is that all of you know that real change never occurs from the top on down. It always occurs from the bottom on. The trade unionists in this room know the history of the trade union movement, of workers coming together to fight for dignity on the job. Nobody gave them the permission to form a union, they fought for it. Everybody here who knows the history of the civil rights movement knows that millions of African Americans and their allies made it very clear, struggled, went to jail, sometimes died, in order to make sure that everybody knew that racism and bigotry and segregation were not what this country was about. Think about this. 100 years ago, no time at all, from an historical perspective, women in America did not have the right to vote, could not get the education they wanted, could not do the jobs they wanted 100 years ago. But what women did, along with their male allies, they stood up, they struggled, they went on hunger strikes, they were arrested, some of them died, to say that in America, women will not be second-class citizens. If we were here a mere 6 or 7 years ago, no time at all, and somebody jumps up and says, you know, Bernie, The $7.25 an hour minimum wage is a starvation wage. I think we should raise it to say $15 an hour. Now what would happen, the person next to it would say, $15 an hour, you're nuts. That's double the minimum wage. Nobody will go for that. You're too radical, you're crazy. Well, you know what happened? Workers in the fast food industry, McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's, they went out on strike. And I had the honor of marching with them in Washington, D.C. And then the word got out. And people began thinking about it and say, yeah, these guys are right, $7.25, you can't make it. And then Seattle, $15. San Francisco, Los Angeles, $15. Oregon, $15. California, $15. But the point is, what is the point to all of these reflections? It is that when people stand up and fight back, they change the reality. What was a crazy idea 7 years ago of $15 an hour is now being passed by states and cities all over America. And together, we are going to pass it nationally. That is what this campaign and the political revolution is about. It is thinking not the way media wants you to think, oh, this choice or that choice. Do we cut education or we cut healthcare? Do we give $100 billion in tax breaks to the rich or $200 billion? That's the debate. That is not the debate that we accept. Real change takes place when people look around them and they suddenly say, the status quo is wrong. It is wrong to see workers and children exploited, wrong to see minorities exploited, wrong to see women exploited, wrong to see gays exploited. I want you to think about that. If we were here 10 years ago and somebody jumps up and says, you know, I think in 2015, gay marriage will be legal in every state in this country, nobody would have believed him. You're crazy. There's too much prejudice. There's too much homophobia in America. Can't happen. It happened because people started. That is where we are at this moment in American history. Millions of people from coast to coast, they're looking around and they're saying, why is it that we have grotesque levels of income and wealth inequality? Why do people have to work 2 or 3 jobs to take care of their families? Why are we the only major country on earth that doesn't guarantee health care or paid family and medical leave to all of our people? Why are there communities around this country that are falling apart, where children don't get a decent education, don't have access to health care, where unemployment is off the charts? Why? Why do we have to accept it? And the answer is, when we stand together and we do not allow the Donald Trumps of the world to divide us up, when we stand as black and white and Latino and African American and Native American and Asian American, when we stand as gay and straight and men and women, as people born in this country, people who came to this country. together and are prepared to have a vision and are prepared to fight, there is nothing we cannot accomplish. On June 7th, there is going to be an enormously important primary here in California. If there is a large voter turnout, we will win the California primary.